Hello and welcome to the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of June 5, 2025. A large number of events have occurred today, so let's get started. We'll begin with the Sumy section of the front, where both the Russian army and the Ukrainian armed forces continue their offensives. As for the Russian side, it appears that today, the Russian army's forward units have reached the next or second line of defense of the Ukrainian armed forces, which runs through the settlements of Kotin, Pisarevka and Malaya Korchakovka. According to some cartographers, over the past 24 hours, Russian units have managed to expand their control zone south of the settlement of Kondratovka, as well as the settlement of Andreevka. Several important forest belts and strongpoints have come under Russian control, and currently there is a buildup of forces directly opposite the settlements of Pisarevka and Kotin. It appears that some level of control will soon be established using drones. There are many lakes here, some along the Oleshna River. Due to the abundance of water obstacles, the mobility and logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces in this area are quite limited. There are only a few roads and highways actively used by the Ukrainian armed forces, so they will soon come under fire control. In the coming weeks, we can expect a large number of videos showing strikes on Ukrainian equipment moving north from Sumy toward Kotin, Pisarevka, and possibly toward Unakivka as well. We can see a slight imbalance in the offense. The west flank is advancing rather actively. Over the past few days, the Russian army has taken control of the settlements of Konstantinovka, Novokonstantinovka, Kondratovka, Andreevka, and Alexievka. Essentially, the first line of defense on the western flank is already fully controlled by the Russian army. Forward units are now advancing to the next stage. On the central and eastern directions, the offensive is somewhat slower. Perhaps this is intentional, it's hard to say. Maybe it's all part of the plan. Still, despite the slower pace in the center and east, compared to the west, there is forward movement. Today, some analysts and cartographers reported the complete clearing of the settlement of Yablunovka. Possibly in the near future, the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Northern Forces Group will officially confirm this. A large number of objective control videos are being published from this direction. Because the Russian army is advancing rapidly southward, the Ukrainian side has been unable to evacuate everything, and we're beginning to see a growing number of videos showing captured equipment being transported to Moscow or central Russia. As a reminder, we last saw such footage after the battles for Sudzha. After Sudzha fell, there were many videos of Bradley vehicles, Abrams tanks, and others being removed. It seems we're about to see something similar again. In the next few days, while the area around Unakivka is being cleared, we'll likely see more such videos. Despite Russia's active advance and the Ukrainian military's own statements about critical conditions, saying that their defenses are unable to withstand Russia's offensive and that the Russian army is using large numbers of infantry, I'd like to draw your attention to several important points. I've been thinking a lot about this today, and if we track the whole situation developing north of Sumy during the Sumy offensive, we see that since May 1, 2025, the Ukrainian side has released virtually no objective control footage. There were some videos from the settlement of Belovody published back on May 13th, nearly a month ago, also from Lochnia. But since the Russian army began its active phase with rapid breakthroughs, roughly around May 20th, we've seen nothing from the Ukrainian side for 2 weeks. All the information and map updates from this front section over the past 2 weeks are based on reports from the Russian Ministry of Defense and possibly the Northern Forces Group, along with videos showing Russian soldiers raising flags. The Ukrainian side has stopped updating the map or providing any geolocated information that would allow such updates. It's a very interesting move by the Ukrainian command. It's hard to say whether the situation is truly that bad, or if there are no units left capable of counterattacks or maneuvers. We can only speculate. Now let's talk about the Tetkino section of the front, which is radically different from what we see north of Sumy. Today we're starting to get the first alarming reports. Many pro-Russian telegram channels, some of which have connections to ground units, are reporting from units now effectively surrounded in Tetkino. These units are holding circular defenses as Russian forces advance toward Sumy. Ukrainian assault brigades such as the 425th Skala, 225th, 33rd, 47th, and others are being worn down by Russian defenses. The reports from Tetkino describe the situation as critical. The only road from Tetkino toward Popovo-Leżaczy and farther northeast to the mainland is now under complete fire control from the Ukrainian armed forces, including FPV drones. The distance from Ukrainian positions to this last supply road is only 2 kilometers, which is practically nothing, even for basic drones. We're not talking about fiber optic drones here. Even simple drones are enough. In short, the Russian army is trying to hold defenses in Popovo-Leżaczy and Tetkino, in what is effectively a circular defense in a state of operational encirclement, or possibly even partial encirclement. At this very moment, the Ukrainian side is intensifying pressure as much as possible on this front. Meanwhile, Russian forces continue their advance towards Sumy. And while over the past 2 weeks the situation seemed somewhat balanced, today we're starting to hear alarming signals from Russian soldiers. To reiterate, I'm not receiving these signals directly. This is information spreading through various Telegram channels, positioning themselves as pro-Russian and claiming to have connections with ground troops. We'll continue to monitor how this develops, but attention should be paid to this section of the front. As we've previously discussed, during the overall advance towards Sumy, we noted multiple times that a new offensive was likely to begin from the eastern part of the front. Today, many primarily pro-Russian cartographers made updates around the settlement of Prokody. This village was partially marked as under Russian control. A few days ago, the village of Marina also came under Russian control. Now it seems Prokody is too. This marks the second settlement east of Sumy under Russian control. So we can expect an advance toward Ugroidi, Malaya Rybitsa and Miropilia, all settlements between the state border and the Sumy forest, a large wooded area right in the center of the Russian offensive. The entire forest perimeter may soon be cleared by the Russian army. That's the current state of affairs on this section of the front. We await further updates and geolocations soon. Next, we'll move to the Kupiansk sector of the front, starting with the northeastern part of Kharkiv region near the settlement of Vovchansk. Today there's been high activity, including FPV drone strikes near Vovchansky Khutory. If today a large number of objective control footage was published showing the operations of Russian drones specifically in this area, we can observe the search for and identification of FPV drone operator positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, followed by artillery strikes on their deployment locations. So, a high number of strikes is causing heavy losses in terms of both operators and drones. A dense concentration of strikes, that suggests the Russian army may soon attempt to advance from the village of Tikaya toward, once again, Volchansky Utrovi, possibly with a crossing of the Volchia River. We'll keep monitoring. Next, we move to the Kupiansk section of the front. When it comes to this direction, the main news today is coming from the southern Kupiansk sector, or the Lyman direction. Again, we see a large number of icons, a lot of updates, and accordingly, many adjustments, some confirmed, others not. Let me remind you that a few days ago, footage surfaced confirming the presence of Russian units on the Ukrainian side of the Nitrius River in the area of these barracks. Based on this footage and a few others, there was a significant coloring shift from Red Kodub towards the Nitrius River and Karpovka. Later, more drone footage emerged, as well as a report from the Russian Ministry of Defense announcing the full clearing of the settlement of Red Kodub. Today, more footage was released showing the fighting for this village. As usual, the video sequence starts with artillery strikes, followed by air-dropped bombs, drone strikes, then assault troops. In the final seconds, as is typical in these videos, we see Russian soldiers raising the Russian flag in different parts of the village. There are no more questions about Red Kodub. A stable foothold has been established. Apparently, any Ukrainian attempts at counterattacks were repelled by the Russian army. Now a regrouping has already occurred, and Russian units have resumed their advance. According to some cartographers and geolocations, the movement has begun in a southwestern direction. Let me remind you, there were speculations. The Russian army might advance further west, toward Lazovo and the Oskol River, thus potentially cutting the southern Kupiansk direction into at least 2 separate zones, like the Borovo direction and the Lyman direction. There were also theories that Russian forces might move northwest toward the settlement of Borovaya. However, based on geolocation data and flags, we see that the movement, as we anticipated, is in fact going southward, toward the village of Chandrigolova. And most likely, the advance will continue further south toward the town of Lyman. That's a long-term prospect. If we talk about the current situation, then today, according to various mapping services and analysts, the Russian armed forces have managed to semi-encircle the village of Zelenaya Dolina. The village was effectively cut off from supply lines coming from Chandrigolova. The area is now under full control, with no possibility of evacuation or withdrawal of Ukrainian units. This information comes mainly from neutral and pro-Russian cartographers. Ukrainian sources have not confirmed any of it yet. But as we've discussed recently, for the past 3 months at least, pro-Ukrainian mappers, who used to lead in terms of updates, have now become the ones lagging behind. Before, almost all mapping changes were based solely on deep state data. They would publish first and others followed, later confirmed by footage. That was the typical flow. But now the situation is entirely different. First, the Russian or neutral experts publish info, then possibly the Ministry of Defense, then geolocations appear. Only after that do pro-Ukrainian resources acknowledge it, and sometimes only after 1 or 2 weeks. This likely reflects a top-down directive, and at this point, we are unlikely to see significant updates or changes from deep state unless they are absolutely clear and undeniable. Returning to the Lyman direction, today a new geolocation appeared from this point. Based on that, a new area was colored in. So it seems that the semi-encirclement or complete encirclement of Zelenaya Dolina has taken place. Most likely during the night of June 5th to 6th, Ukrainian units, if they are able, will attempt to break out of the encirclement toward Chandrigolova. If they don't make it in time, then tomorrow Zelenaya Dolina will most likely be fully marked as under Russian control, and the Russian Ministry of Defense will likely confirm this. After that, fighting for Chandrigolova will begin, and if that settlement falls, the battle for Lyman will automatically begin. This would be the 3rd battle for Lyman since 2022. Next, we move to the Siversk sector. Recently, the area between Siversk and Verkhnekamenskoye has seen intense activity. Today is no exception. A large number of objective control videos again. There's a very high pace of Russian FPV drone, UAV, and artillery operations here. It appears that a special unit was sent in. Their main task is likely to clear this area as quickly as possible. Fields, forest belts, strong points between Verkhnekamenskoye, Novoselka, and Siversk. Based on this, we can expect an offensive here in the near future. It's hard to say exactly when it will begin, maybe in a week, 5 days, or even tonight. Hard to say, but one thing is clear, the activity level here is extremely high. They are sparing no resources, especially not FPV drone operators, who are a crucial asset and could have been deployed in Sumy or Konstantinovka, but were sent here for a very specific task, to clear this pocket, secure passage, and enable the assault of Russian vehicles and units towards Siversk from the east, via the shortest route, no flanking through Serebryanka or Grigorovka, or along the railway, just straight through Verkhnekamenskoye into Siversk, covering just a kilometer with minimal losses and securing the eastern outskirts. Next, we move toward the Konstantinovka direction. There's very high activity here as well. A large number of geolocations, drone strikes, artillery work, active clearing of terrain, strongpoints, and forest belts. Drone strikes, missile strikes, air-dropped bombs, and of course, map corrections. Speaking of the town of Chasov Yar, there is a small update. Various mapping sources report Russian units advancing northward from Chasov Yar toward the village of Maiskoye. We're awaiting additional geolocations and might get something soon. Along the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal, an assault is already underway on the settlement of Belaya Gora. Today we're seeing footage of operations there, clearing the area and preparing a foothold for an assault from southern, actually northern, Delievka. Also, we've received interesting reports that the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal was crossed from Kleshchayevka, northeast of Belaya Gora. So the Russian army may attempt an assault on Belaya Gora from at least 2 directions, south and northeast. Next, we move to the Kleshchayevka pocket, starting with the eastern flank, from the settlement of Toretsk. Today, Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see a series of FPV drone strikes on Russian army positions in this area. Some of the strikes were geolocated. This particular one was confirmed in this location. So what we can observe is that the Russian army is gradually advancing northward. The situation with the mines located to the northwest of Toretsk remains unclear. It's unknown whether they are still under the control of Ukrainian armed forces units or have already been cleared by the Russian army. Despite the uncertain status of these positions, Russian forces are continuing their push northward, and this perimeter, including these reservoirs, has come under Russian control. We can also see that Russian units have reached the next defensive line of strongpoints located along the T-0516 road, heading in the direction of Nelipivka. As for the southern section of the Kleban-Beek salient, we haven't received any updates from the area of the settlement of Zaria for the fourth day in a row, I believe. Even though most mapping sources have already marked this area as under the control of the Russian armed forces, we still haven't received any reliable information from either the northern or northeastern parts, including the area around 20th Shaft. We expect the Russian Ministry of Defense to confirm a full clearing operation soon, but for now, at least half of the settlement of Zaria remains in the grey zone. Despite the ambiguous situation in Zaria and the surrounding settlements of Novospaska, Shcherbinovka, Katerinovka, and Kleban-Beek, the situation on the western outskirts of Yablunivka is clear and unambiguous. More precisely, the Russian army is steadily advancing there, and every day, several buildings and homes come under Russian control. Today, Russian sources released these drone footage clips, showing how Russian units are gradually making progress in the western part of Yablunivka. At first, we can observe FPV drone strikes, including Molniya-type drones, targeting Ukrainian positions. Later in the video, we see Russian assault troops clearing out the remains of Ukrainian positions and buildings, moving slowly. We can see that the Ukrainian side, for the most part, is offering little to no resistance, or at least it's very limited. Today we've seen another update on the control map, and in fact, there was one yesterday too. Here we see additional gains. I believe the day before yesterday also showed new gains. So now, every day, small portions of Yablunivka are being taken piece by the Russian armed forces. Russian units are steadily moving toward the central part of the settlement, and it seems that very soon we'll be able to confidently say that at least 20 to 30, maybe even 40% of Yablunivka is under Russian control. This is a key settlement, and the Russian army is expected to dig in along its outskirts and continue the advance. As we can see, the movement is not only happening in the southern part of the village, between the anti-tank ditches, but also along the H32 road. Today, additional combat footage was published. We won't be watching it due to the high level of violence shown, but we can see that Russian forces are gradually moving between two anti-tank trenches, progressing through this chain of fortified positions. This is a very heavily fortified zone, perhaps one of the most fortified that Russian forces have encountered throughout the entire special military operation. There have only been about 20 or so comparable ones, if that. And we're not talking about small strongholds here, but a full-scale network of defensive positions. Next, we move toward the H32 highway itself. Today there are reports of minor advances, more accurately a leveling of the front line, along the Myrolyubivka, Malinivka, Shevchenko 1, Popiv Yar line. We are receiving information about clearing operations in the forest belts between Shevchenko 1 and Popiv Yar along the anti-tank ditch, which is quite deep, dug out by the Ukrainians. Along these lines, the front is now being stabilized. Russian forces are consolidating and possibly preparing to advance further. Further south, some cartographers have already completely marked the pocket between Mykolaiivka, Myrolyubivka, Yelizavetivka, and Malinivka as under Russian control. We may soon see visual confirmation of this, or more trustworthy sources may verify it. If confirmed, the Russian army would need only a few days for regrouping before continuing the advance from these strongpoints toward Mykolaiivka and Novoekonomichna. Taking Novoekonomichna could become something of a media bombshell at any moment. Next, we move to the Dnipro and Vuhledar directions. Here, we also observe a large number of geolocated positions and flag icons, indicating gains by Russian units according to various mapping sources. Most of this data comes from neutral or pro-Russian experts. Ukrainian sources have yet to make updates, perhaps mistakenly so, but it is what it is. This is today's reality. Regarding the Novopavlivka direction, the encirclement ring around Alexeyevka is gradually tightening. Today, additional gains were marked around the contested area, with several forest belts now under Russian control. A unique feature of pro-Ukrainian mappers lately is that they no longer deny Russian advances. They acknowledge them, even Deep State confirms it. But they tend to release summary updates. For example, if pro-Russian or neutral sources update even small advances, 100, 200 or 300 meters during the day, they reflect it immediately. Ukrainian sources, however, collect this data and only publish it every 2 weeks or so. So while they do confirm advances, for 2 weeks nothing changes on their maps, creating the illusion of stability. Then suddenly, they color in a large area as under Russian control. Often even more land is marked as grey zone, leaving observers confused. But this is the reality on this axis. Russian forces are gradually advancing from the north toward Alexeyevka, and very soon Ukrainian forces may face serious problems. Fire control is being established over the Alexeyevka, Zelenokutnova, Ukrainka, Dalina, Dakhna roads. Fierce fighting is currently taking place near the settlement of Fedorivka. Moreover, today some reliable sources with ties to the Vostok Group confirmed that Russian forces have secured the southern and southeastern outskirts of Fedorivka. According to trusted pro-Russian sources, about a third of Fedorivka is now under Russian control, and the advance continues. There are also reports that Russian forces have closed the distance to Komar from the east. So we may soon see the end of the battle for Fedorivka and the beginning of a new phase around Komar, possibly next week. The distance has been reduced to essentially a single infantry sprint. We'll keep watching, but the likelihood of rapid developments here is extremely high. Another interesting area is the Zaporizhzhia front, especially around Huliaipol and the town of Orikhiv. Regarding Huliaipol, in the past 24 hours, a large amount of drone and artillery footage has been published. Russian artillery, airstrikes, FPV drones in action. Compared to the relative calm here previously, the sudden surge in reports suggests that this might be the start of artillery preparation. In the near future, Russian forces may attempt to enter Huliaipol or at least probe Ukrainian defenses in this sector. We'll keep monitoring the situation. Again, the chances of renewed movement here are high, and of course, Orikhiv itself. A large number of geolocated positions have emerged today. In particular, footage was published of the destruction of a bridge connecting the northern and southern parts of Orikhiv. We had already seen video of the destroyed bridge several days ago. Today it's being circulated again. That detonation likely occurred 7 to 10 days ago. But those aren't even the most important visuals from Orikhiv. The most significant footage comes from the south. Today it appears that Russian forces have indeed launched an offensive. In this footage, we can observe Russian TOS-1A Sontsepyok strikes on frontline Ukrainian positions south of Orikhiv and Novodanilivka. Some pro-Russian mapping sources mark progress by Russian assault units in the area of the Sontsepyok strikes. If this offensive has begun, it may not be stopped. We'll be watching this axis closely, and now we move to Kherson. Today, airstrikes were reported on the district administration building in Kherson. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and take care.